Hey folks, welcome back to my channel and welcome to a new vlog. I know it's been radio silent for a few weeks, but I have just been canning and preserving and gardening. You know how it goes. If you garden in any capacity, you know this time of year it's just go, go, go. So today we are going to, well, in this vlog, I should say, because I don't know if it's just going to be today. I kind of doubt it, but we are going to talk tomatoes. So I have 2.5 bushels of canning tomatoes that need to be worked up because they are all beautiful and ripe and ready to go. So, first order of business, we're going to make some pasta sauce. It is just the garlic basil pasta sauce recipe on the Ball Canning website. I will link it in the description box. I know that there are some other pasta sauce recipes in the Ball Canning book. I do not have the most recent version of the book. The book that I have is like 40 years old. So anyway, if you have the Ball Canning book and you want to use one of those recipes, go for it. Just make sure that with tomatoes, you do follow those recipes and make sure you do add that additional acid it calls for. I personally don't like citric acid in my tomato products. I would rather use the lemon juice. So that's what I'm going to be doing for all the recipes that I share in this vlog, because we're going to do pasta sauce, we're going to do salsa, we're going to do tomato juice. So I'm going to start off by washing all of these tomatoes and cutting the cores out and cutting the blossom end off and quartering them and putting them in this pot in batches to cook down. And then we're going to run it all through a food mill. I'm not going to film all of that because I am sure that the my husband and my daughter are playing behind the camera and having big times. But I'm sure the sound of the water running and then shutting off and running and shutting off will send some of you into orbit. So I'm not going to film all that. I will see you back here in a few when I get this pot full and we get to the next steps. Okay, folks, everybody in my house is asleep right now, so I'm going to try to stay quiet. Hopefully, you can hear me. This isn't some weird ASMR thing. I'm just trying to stay quiet. But if you've ever canned before, you know that it's go time all at once. So, um, after we cooked those tomatoes down, it was just straight tomatoes. We didn't add anything to them except like maybe a half a cup of water just to keep the bottom from scorching as they broke down. We ran them through a food mill. I think I got a little bit of that. And then I went back and I used a fine mesh sieve and I strained the really runny juice from the sauce, like the actual pulp of the tomatoes and all that good stuff. And I saved the scraps for tomato paste, but we're going to do that dead last, like probably in a day or two. This is definitely going to be a 2 or 3 day vlog. We're probably going to get posted in the middle of the week, which is not my normal time, but I haven't posted anything in forever, so it doesn't really matter, I guess. So this has been cooking on low, just simmering for 20 minutes while my water bath canner has been heating up. It is steaming right now, which is what you want. You don't want a full boil yet. And I have cleaned my jars and I've just been keeping them warm in a 170-degree oven on a cookie sheet. And I like doing this because it just keeps everything easy and I can transport my jars all together this way. So to the sauce, I added one very big onion. It was probably ended up being a cup and a half of onion and 8 cloves of garlic, and I blitzed that through my Ninja and put all that in there so the sauce is really smooth. I also, the recipe does not call for this on the website, but I also put in a teaspoon of salt and a teaspoon of sugar just because I know tomato flavor and I know what I like in my tomato flavor and it mellows it out a little bit. It's not so in your face. The very last thing that I've done is added a little bit more than a half a cup of chopped fresh basil that I got out of the garden. So I'm going to stir this in and then I'm going to add a tablespoon of bottled lemon juice to each jar before I ladle my sauce into my jars. This recipe says that it makes about 7 pint jars. I always prep 1 or 2 extra just in case. If nothing else, if it doesn't fill up to the headspace level, which this recipe is a 1/2 inch headspace, but if it doesn't fill up to the headspace level, you can keep that what's left in the fridge and use it within the week. So that is my plan. So I'm going to go ahead and stir this in. And I think I talked about it at the beginning of the video, but for the lemon juice, you cannot skip that in each jar. And I prefer to just add the lemon juice to each jar instead of adding it in a big batch to the sauce, because that way I know that my ratios like per pint are even Steven where they're supposed to be. So I've got the heat off of my sauce. I just stirred in that basil and I'm going to grab my tablespoon and my lemon juice and just fill my spoon up and dump in. Okay, and I'm just going to do that in 6 jars right now because, like I said, I'm not sure how many jars I'm going to get out of this amount. So we'll just start with that. And then once these are filled up, if I've still got more sauce, I'll put lemon juice in these too. So what you'll need from here is a funnel, a paper towel that's either damp with warm water or with vinegar. to wipe the rims off and then clean lids and bands. So I've got my clean lids and bands or rings. And then once we get all these jars filled, we'll put the rings on, screw the bands on, and get them in the canner. And one piece of canning equipment that I just really think you need, apart from the little grabby dealy do to get jars in and out of the canner, is a funnel that fits a regular mouth mason jar. It's a non-negotiable for me. It makes things so much easier. And I believe Sleeping Beauty is awake. Let's see. That sounds like it. Hi. Are you awake? And now everybody in the house is awake, so I can speak up again. So, as I said, I'm just filling these jars up to 1/2 inch headspace. And if you're not sure and you don't have like a headspace measurer thing, it's not a crisis. Nobody's going to die. You can tell by the rings or the band rings on the jars themselves. And I will show you a close up with a jar that's not hot in just a second. Okay, so this is 1 inch, this is a 1/2 inch, this is a 1/4 inch headspace. So if you just line up your food, whatever you're processing, to whatever level that you need, whatever the recipe calls for, just do it like that, and it's same difference. You don't need the little tool to measure. Oh my gosh, I wish you could smell this kitchen. It smells so good right now. I think this recipe is going to be a little shy, but I also, I think I mentioned I went ahead and reserved juice. So I think that's probably what's causing my recipe to be a little bit off. But I don't want runny pasta sauce either. That doesn't sound like a good time. So I think I've got one more jar, which gives me 4, which is enough to put in the water bath canner without it being like, without anything funky happening. And I can just use these pints that I've got to do my tomato sauce later. And I'll put a couple of quart jars on here after I wash them and put them back in that 170-degree oven. That way they're just ready to go when I'm ready for them. And then I think the processing time on this is a 1/2 hour, but I will have to double check. And as I said, I'm going to put the recipe in the description box. So if I messed up a time or something, it'll be there, and I will come back on and correct myself when I get these processing. Okay, so we've got this down, and I need to make a correction. It is 40 minutes of processing time at my elevation. We are over 1,000 feet above sea level. So the recipe says 35 minutes for pints, 40 minutes for quarts. If you're above that level, but that's at sea level. So if you're above that 1,000-foot mark, you need to add 5 minutes. So since these are pints, I'm going to water bath these for 40 minutes once this comes to a rolling boil. You don't start that timer until it starts to boil. So something else that I forgot to talk about or show you before I put these in, and I do it almost every single time I can. And you would think that with as many times as I've done this, I would remember, but I almost never do. And I almost always have to take my lids back off and debubble. It's just as simple as using like a little plastic knife or something to just run along the edges and kind of stir up the contents of your jars to make sure that there's no air pockets in there. And then that way you can look at your headspace again and add more food if you need to, like whatever it is you're canning, you can add more to it if you need to once you've gotten any air pockets out of your jar. Every single time, not every single time, but like 99% of the time, I forget to do that. And then I get on my ring or my lids and my rings on, and I'm like, yeah, no, I didn't check any of these for air bubbles. So that's exactly what happened here. And it looks like I am at a roll and boil now. So I'm going to set my kitchen timer for 40 minutes and we'll come back when these come out of the can. All right, guys, these jars of pasta sauce are still processing. And I decided while those go, I'm just going to go ahead and get my tomato juice going too, because this vlog is going to be 11 years long if I don't combine some stuff. So while these go, I'm going to put this juice that we separated from the sauce that we used for the pasta sauce back in this pot. I'm going to put it on low and heat it up to 190 degrees. And then I'm canning my juice in quarts. So what I'm going to do is wash my quart jars, get them put in that 170-degree oven with my lids so that everything stays warm. Since I'm putting hot food in a jar, I need to put it in a hot jar. Hot food in hot jar, cold food in cold jar. So heat this up, and then in each quart jar, before I put it in the water bath to process, I will add 2 tablespoons of the bottled lemon juice and a teaspoon of canning salt. You can use kosher salt if you don't have the canning salt. Just don't use like iodized salt or anything like that. So I'm going to bring this up slowly to 190 degrees. 2 tablespoons lemon juice, 1 teaspoon of 1 teaspoon of salt per quart jar, and then those will go in the water bath for 45 minutes because the processing time says 40 minutes. My elevation, I need to add that 5 minutes of 45 minutes. So that's the plan for this. All right, folks, it is a new day, which means different tomato product. We are going to do salsa today, restaurant style salsa, so it's all going to be pretty smooth. I had to run some errands this morning after church, so Wayne did all of the hard work for me. He processed a big batch of tomatoes and strained the juice from the sauce. So I've got the juice back in a gallon jar. We'll deal with it later. But right now we're going to make salsa, and I am loosely following the recipe for fresh tomato salsa on the Ball canning website. I say loosely because I'm not using the whole tomato, I'm using the sauce, and I switch up the seasonings a little bit because you always, and I don't know if I've mentioned this yet or not, but you always want to taste whatever it is you're making before you can it, because if you don't like it, there's no point in you canning it. So you need to make sure that you're doing some quality control and tasting things as you go. We've talked about this with the pasta sauce. Just make sure that you have that appropriate amount of lemon juice per the appropriate size jar in each jar. In this case, I'm going to use bottled lime juice because I like the flavor of the lime juice in the salsa better than the lemon juice. I like the lemon juice better in a pasta sauce. So we're going to use bottled lime juice, but it does the same thing. And so for this recipe, it calls for 7 cups of fresh chopped tomatoes. This is like 8 to 9 cups of sauce because I'm going to cook this down to thicken it. So we should end up with about 7-ish cups. And I'm going to chunk up a couple of onions that are like medium size, 3 seeded jalapenos, a bunch of basil, probably half of this, or basil, cilantro, probably half of this. And someone would like my attention. But I'm also going to add in 4 or 5 cloves of garlic, and I'm just going to put it in my little Ninja bullet and blend it up and put it in here. Bring this to a boil and then lower the heat and simmer it for 15 minutes. And then the same song and dance whatever the processing time calls for. If your elevation is above 1,000 feet, you add 5 minutes to it. Process in a hot water bath, remove your jars, and then you've got salsa that's shelf stable for however long you want it. So we're gonna go ahead and get going on chopping up our veggies to add to this. Okay, folks, so this has simmered for 15 minutes. So we are ready to fill our jars. And remember, I have my jars in a 170-degree oven to just keep them hot, because hot food in a hot jar, cold food in a cold jar. And I've got my lids and rings over here ready to go. My water bath canner is steaming, so we're good to go. This requires a 1/2-inch headspace, so I'm just going to fill these jars. Also, wow, someone is fighting a nap for all she's worth right now. So I think we talked about it with the pasta sauce. In the pint jars, you put a tablespoon of your acid, bottled lemon juice, bottled lime juice, whatever. These are 1/2 pints, so it stands to reason that you put 1/2 of that. If you have a 1/2 tablespoon measuring spoon, use that. I can't find mine, but I could find my teaspoon and my 1/4 teaspoon. So I'm going to put, there are 3 teaspoons in a tablespoon, so I'm going to do 1.5 teaspoons in each jar to make my 1/2 tablespoon. So let's go ahead and get that going. Okay, so I have my jars filled. I debubbled them. I wiped the rims down with some vinegar, got the lids on fingertip tight. The recipe says to water bath can for 1/2 pints for 20 minutes. So as we've talked about, I'm going to add 5 minutes to that for a processing time of 25 minutes. When the time is up, I'm going to pull them just above the water where the rack is now, so they can sit for 5 minutes or so, and then take them out to sit undisturbed for at least a day. Hey folks, it is another day, another tomato recipe, and I know I've got a Broomhilda situation going on, but I need to look semi-presentable this evening, and I know I'm not going to have time to be bothered with actually fixing my hair, so heatless curls it is. But we've done pasta sauce, we've done salsa, we've done tomato juice. I made the tomato paste, but I didn't film any of it because I ended up not doing what I had planned on doing. Just let me show you what I did. I froze it, and it worked out great, and I'll walk you through how I did it. But I realized when I froze this, I need to get it in bags and freezer bags now that it's nice and frozen. That I don't have any regular ice cube trays, so I've got little festive, festive tomato paste blocks. But what I did with all of those scraps, and I'm just going to be totally honest with you, I could have gotten a lot more. I think I have 5 little of those little silicone mold things. Like there's fall ones, Halloween ones, and the Christmas one in there. But what I did is I took all those scraps, like from doing the food mill with all the other stuff that I did, all the seeds and the skins, put them in this pot, and I didn't fill the pot with water, but I filled it with enough water to cover the scraps. And then I just reduced that by 1/2 on medium to medium-low heat. It took every bit of 3 hours to reduce that by 1/2. Then I ran all of that waste with your tomatoes. You can cook them down a second time, reduce it by half, food mill it again, and then if you are really feeling your Wheaties, you can take all of your skins and throw them on a dehydrator and make tomato powder, which is just even more concentrated. That is not in my spirit yet, okay? um, so after I did all that, I put the juice pulp mix that went through the food mill back in the pot, and I reduced it by half, which took about an hour and a half on medium heat, and I just stirred every once in a while to make sure nothing was scorching or sticking. And when that was done, I let it cool, because the thought of getting everything out to can one batch of 4-ounce jars for it was going to take over an hour because I have to process for 40 minutes. I could not be bothered to do it. So I let it cool all the way, and I got those silicone molds out and got everything portioned out in that and frozen. But like I said, I still have like 5 molds worth of tomato paste, which is more than enough for what my household will use in a year. So at some point today, while I'm doing what I'm doing now, which I'll get to in a second, I will throw those in a freezer bag and make sure it's labeled with what it is and the year that I put it up, so that way I know what I'm working with. This is the odds and ends that I had left tomato-wise. This is essentially 20 cups of tomatoes, and that's basically what I had left. And our own tomatoes are starting to come in now, but I don't know what happened with ours. I know we got early blight, and we got early blight on our potato plants too, even though they're on opposite sides of our garden. So our potatoes, this is gonna be a trip, me talking about this. Our potatoes didn't put on the way I wanted them to. The red potatoes did great, but our Yukon Golds were just meh. So that was kind of disappointing because those are my favorite potatoes. But anyway, the tomatoes got early blight too, and I did everything. Like I was out there every day pruning and treating with copper fungicide and doing all the things. And I just don't know. The last 2 years, our tomato crop has been terrible. Like it's been shameful, to be perfectly honest. But our tomatoes are finally starting to come in now, but I really only have plum tomatoes, and I have some Cherokee purples that are doing okay. Our beefsteaks are doing terribly, just awful. And our Amish paste tomatoes, I may as well just pull them up because they're in such a sad state, and I don't know what I've done wrong. I don't know. I'm going to try this next growing season. I've got lots of ideas for next year that I need to start writing down so I don't forget. But next year I would like to start my own tomato and pepper plants. I've never done that before. I've always ended up buying the plugs. I've never started my own tomatoes and peppers. So I would like to try that with some heirloom seeds and see if I have better luck. I don't know. I might not. That might just be ridiculous to even think, but we'll see. I mean, it's worth a shot. One way or the other, I'll still have some sort of tomatoes, right? At least that's the hope. So, with what was left, which was about 20 cups, I am making barbecue sauce. This is only going to make about 3 pints. That's okay. We don't use tons and tons of barbecue sauce, but this is using stuff that I needed to use. So, like we harvested a whole bunch of onions. I planted vidalias and red onions, even though they're purple. I don't know why we call them red onions. Anyway, and I don't know what's going on with that either. Maybe someone can help me out with and knows all the things and can help me out in the comments, because I by no means know all there is to know. But our onions that I cured, some of them got soft on the outside, which happens. I understand that, and I ended up using those in like stir fries and stuff. But some of these are starting to rot from the stem, from the inside out, and that I don't love, because you don't know until you cut into it that you've got an issue, that you have an issue. So I think what I'm probably going to end up doing with the majority of the onions we've got downstairs, I follow that Emily Ann Roberts girl. Full disclosure, I did not even know that she was a country music artist until like a month ago, maybe 2 roughly chopped. It's not, they're not even chopped. I just chunked them up. I've got 4 medium-sized onions in here, and then I have a tablespoon each of mustard seed, red pepper flakes, and celery seed. And I'm just going to let this cook down. It says the recipe is from the Ball Canning website. I'll link it in the description. But it says to just stir this and let it cook down for 30 minutes and then run it through a food mill and then put it back in the pot with some more seasonings. I got everything out, so it'll be vinegar, lemon juice, salt, ginger, cinnamon. Oh, and there's some garlic in here already too. That makes sense. And brown sugar. So once you run it through a food mill, you dump your liquid back in here with those add-ins, cook it down. It suggested another 30 to 45 minutes just until you get the consistency that you want in a barbecue sauce, and then you hot water bath can it. I think it's for 20 minutes, but we'll get there. So I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to kind of do a little double duty right now and film a separate vlog because hot peppers have started coming in, and this vlog will be 400 years long if I try to do all of this in one, because I have a feeling this is already like at least a half-hour vlog with just tomato stuff. So I will come back on here when we start to run this through the food mill and do next steps. Okay, folks, we're back. I have ran this through the food mill and I put it back in the pot. It just came to a simmer. I added the recipe called for, I'm not going to be able to remember all the measurements, I don't think, but I added a cup of vinegar, a third cup of lemon juice, 2 tablespoons of salt, and a teaspoon each of cinnamon and ginger, ground cinnamon and ground ginger. It also calls for ground nutmeg. I'm not big on nutmeg, so I'm leaving it out, but of course, always taste your food before you put it into your jars to can. I might change my mind and add it in. I don't know. So it does say to simmer this for 30 to 45 minutes just until you get the consistency that you want. So I went ahead and set a 45-minute timer. It's got 36 minutes left on it now. So we're going to let this do its thing, and I'm going to work on a few more projects and see what I can do to multitask while this is going, because I'm not just going to babysit this for a half hour. All right, it has been probably closer to 50 minutes now. I ended up not liking the consistency at the 30 and 45-minute mark, so I went ahead and cooked it down just a little bit longer. I think this is going to be fantastic. It tastes great. So, I don't know, something happened funky with my screen there. Anyway, my water bath canner's ready. My jars are hot. My lids and rings have been sterilized and have been steaming in hot water. So we're going to fill our jars, debubble, put our lids on, and process. The recipe calls for 20 minutes, so I'm going to do mine for 25 since I'm above 1,000 feet in elevation. Is it elevation or altitude? I always feel like isn't altitude like in the air and elevation is like on land above sea level? I don't know. I guess it doesn't really matter. But anyway, I'm over 1,000 feet above sea level. There we go. So I need to add 5 minutes to my processing times. So in water bath canning, pressure canning is a different beast. We might talk about that later. But anyway, I have 8 jars prepped. The recipe says it makes around 3 pint jars. I have a feeling this is going to make more than that, maybe 4 jars. And I've got some other stuff that I'm wanting to put up today. So I just went ahead and cleaned the 8 that I had handy. I've got a lot more that I'll have to get out and clean as I work through things today. But this is our starting point. So I'm going to ladle these into jars, debubble, wipe the rims of the jars off, make sure my seal's good, put the lids on, process for 25 minutes. While I do this, let's talk about, because this is probably the last thing I'm going to end up doing in this vlog since I got to thinking about it. Let's talk about some stuff that I'm going to do later in the season, and maybe some tips on what to do with some of the smaller tomatoes that you get, like your cherry tomatoes and your plum tomatoes. So I'm doing this now, but as I mentioned earlier, all of my tomatoes that we're growing are starting to come in. My plan with those is to make some more salsa. The Ball Canning site has a recipe for cherry tomato and corn salsa. And I honestly, I have everything for it right now except the cilantro. So that's the only reason I'm not doing any today since I've got everything out. But I will probably make some of that. I'll probably do pints and half pints of that and take half pints to market. And then I also saw, I don't know who posted it. I will get online, and if I can find the original poster, I will link it in the description. But basically, I saw someone do wow, I'll spit it out in a second. I just like left the planet. Sorry. They did freezer packs of cherry tomatoes and basil and an onion and a few cloves of garlic, and they vacuum packed that and froze it. And that way, when you want something that's like fresh pasta sauce or something, you can get that out, thaw it, throw it in a pan, cook it, add some like heavy cream or some chicken stock or something, and have a sauce ready. So I think that's what is going to happen with the majority of our cherry and plum tomatoes, especially the late season ones, because I will be back in the classroom then, and I will not have time to mess with this whole production like I do in the summer. So I think I'll do that. But something that I did not mention, I don't think I've mentioned yet anyway, when you are making tomato products, especially like pasta sauce or like those little packs I was telling you about, do not, under any circumstances, use like pre-packaged, pre-made Italian seasoning blends or fresh or dried sage. Sage is a great flavor. I love that herb. If you can it or freeze it, it turns your food so bitter you can't stand it, and there is nothing that will redeem it. Ask me how I know. Last year, I froze some roasted cherry tomatoes that I just doused with Italian seasoning, and I pulled some of those out of the freezer over the winter to use. And I literally, there was nothing I could do. I tried baking soda, I tried lemon juice, I tried sugar, I tried everything to neutralize the bitterness. Nothing would work. And I was doing some research, doing some reading before this canning season, and it's the sage. So do not add dried or fresh sage to any of your canned or frozen products. Add it once you pull it out of the freezer or dump it out of a can. Go for it. You sage it up, but do not can it because your food will become inedible. And that defeats the purpose of all of this, because this is way too much work and way too much food to waste on something like that, on a rookie mistake like I made. So don't do what I did. I'm going to probably fill up this last jar. I think that's about all I've got left, is a jar left. So this ended up making 5, which is great. Put them in the canner, process them, and guys, I think that'll do it for this go around. So I will see you in the next one. It will probably be very hot pepper focused because that's what I've got coming in from the garden right now. We just started getting jalapenos and banana peppers, and boy, are they coming in. So we'll see what we can get up to then. But until next time, thank you for watching. I hope you had a great week and a great weekend ahead of you. Bye.